We're live in about 15 minutes for our next live lesson for Key Stage 2.
We're looking forward to it and we're all ready for you.
Yeah, and do put your questions before the session in the message box and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the session. We'll see you soon. We're just having final sound checks here and making sure that the mics are working and that you can all hear us loud and clear.
I hope you can. Here we go.
So it's less than 10 minutes to go for our live lesson. We hope you're all ready.
We're really looking forward to it, and so we'll see you very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 5 minutes to the live lesson. We're looking forward to seeing you all there.
Yep, we're all ready and prepared for you.
Hello and welcome to Dee's live lesson, The Mysteries of Insect Timekeeping. The theme for Science Week this year is time, and we are looking at the amazing links between insects and time. I'm Katie and I will be guiding you through this live lesson, and we are joined by zoologist and expert on all things animal, Mike Linley. Thank you so much for all the schools that are joining us across the country. Teachers, you can write your answers to the challenge question that we're going to set and any questions that you have for Mike in the message box, and we will try to answer those questions at the end of the session. Hello to reception to Year 4 at our Holy Island School. We will go to as many schools as we can throughout the session. There will be activities for you to complete. Please fill these in on the handout provided by your teacher. And as an additional challenge, throughout the live lesson, Mike is going to be dropping some time-related facts. I wonder how many you can record on the astonishing time fact handout. Or maybe you can try and remember these and fill it in after the session. I hope Peacock's class at Jennett's Park are ready for the live lesson. Today we are talking about insects and time. Mike and I have visited the Bug Park in Norwich to find out about some interesting insects. So we're first of all looking at this colony of leafcutter ants. Mike, can you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, well, it's very hot in here for a start because these ants come from Trinidad and called leafcutter ants because they cut leaves, which they take back to the nests. Now, they don't actually eat the leaf. They just take it down deep into the nest, which is where the queen is, laying all the eggs. And what they do, they actually grow a fungus on those leaves. And that fungus is unique to leafcutter ants' nests, not found anywhere else in the world. So they grow a fungus, and that's what they and their larvae feed on in the nest. The female queen is huge, and all she does is pump out eggs day after day after day, and she can live for 30 years.
Wow. And
she is producing the entire colony time and time again, year after year. What you'll notice is that there are medium-sized ants actually cutting the leaf, and they cut a leaf by working around it, and it's usually a leg span big, and they know that size they can carry. Then they hoist it above their head in their jaws, and they carry it like a sail all the way back down into the colony. And there are soldier ants that guard the root, and you'll spot a soldier ant because they've got great big heads, because they've got great big jaws. So they need a big head to support the big jaws, and they protect all the ants that are travelling around the forest, bringing leaves back to the colony. Now, what you may not notice, there is another, what we call caste. It's all one species, but ants and bees live in different castes, each with a different role, and their role depends on the size. So there's another group of ants which are very hard to spot because they are tiny, but they are nevertheless fully grown. And they are what I call jockey ants, because you'll notice that as these worker ants are carrying leaves back to the nest, they're vulnerable to other ants from other colonies pinching. They've gone all to all that trouble to cut a piece of leaf, and they've got a long way to take it to the nest, and other ants from other colonies can come and pinch it from them. So these little jockey ants ride on top of that leaf. So the worker ant is carrying a piece of leaf and another ant, and that little ant is designed to try and fend off any attackers who are trying to steal the leaves. Eventually, they will get all these bits of leaves back into the colony where they will grow the fungus that they feed upon.
And that is the first challenge question that we have for you all. How long do you think it will take for this colony of ants to strip these leaves here? Put your guess as a class into the comments and we'll reveal the answer at the end. It's time for activity number 1. On your handout, write down all the insect species that you know. You have 2 minutes to do this. Use the images on the screen to help you. Mike, what makes an insect an insect?
The insect body has 3 basic parts. And you've got one end, it's got the head with the eyes, the mouth and the antennae. Behind the head you have the thorax, and this is where there are 3 pairs of legs, 6 legs, and usually 2 pairs of wings, but sometimes just 1 pair of wings and other times no wings at all. And then beyond the thorax you have the abdomen, which is a softer part of the body, and that's where all the fat is stored, that's where all the breathing tubes are, so the insect can breathe, and all the reproductive organs, they're all in the thorax. Head, thorax, abdomen.
And remember, if you have any questions for Mike about insects, please do write them into the comments box and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the session. And I have to say, happy birthday to Amelia from Stamshaw Junior School joining us today. So some examples of species of insects would include beetles, grasshoppers, praying mantises, ants, bees and wasps. However, species such as spiders, millipedes, centipedes and scorpions are not insects but are sometimes confused as insects. I wonder how many species the pupils at Camelot Primary School could discovered. So we're now going to look at one of the insects up close. Insect. Mike, what have you brought along?
Well, the first insect, this is a locust. In this case, it's a desert locust. Now I'm going to hold it by the wings because they do fly, they fly very well. So by holding the wings together, it's not going to suddenly disappear around the room. Now at this end, we've got the head. So there's the head with the antennae and its eyes. Then behind the head is the thorax, and it's the thorax where all 6 legs come from, and also 2 pairs of wings. They all come from the thorax, and then behind the thorax, you can see here, there's the thorax, and this is the abdomen. This is a squishy bit down at the bottom where all its body parts are. So this has taken about 3 months to get to this size, and it will probably live for another month. And during that time, it will lay eggs and then will die straight after laying eggs.
And are those 3 body parts the same on all insects?
Yes, basically, but they may not look the same when you look at them straight away. For instance, we've got a stick insect here. If we look at the adult stick insect, this one, let's check it out gently, I'll let it sit on me, it's easier. If you look here, it's got the head at this end, and you can see the 2 long antennae coming from it. It's got the thorax, which is quite long in this case, and it's got the 3 pairs of legs coming off the thorax, 1 pair there, 1 there and 1 there. And when I turn it over in a second, you'll see it's got the wings. There you go. So there's 1 pair along the back, which is like a protective pair of wings, that's not used in flying very much at all. But the big pink wings underneath are very large and they allow it to flutter. But it has to maintain the appearance of a stick for camouflage, which is why they're all folded up along its back. And you can see very effective what it's doing now is it's digging all those spines on all its legs into my fingers to say, please drop me, and I'll fly away.
And what's the difference between, you've got an adult one here?
Yes, now the wings themselves, just like the locust, only appear when the adult actually emerges from the last instar. The stages are called instars, from a little baby locust or stick insect, and they grow and shed their skin. And it's only when they get to the very final stage, adult stage, that they've got all the wings fully functional. So if I get out a juvenile for you, so this is a juvenile of the same species of stick insect, and you'll notice, again, it looks like a stick, and the head is here, and this time the 2 antennae, it's holding them forward, again, creating the illusion that it's actually a stick. So by holding them like this, you can't see that it's actually a stick insect. The head is there with the eyes, the thorax goes from here to here, and you can just see little wing case, little buds here developing, and they'll get bigger as it sheds its skin, and it will finally look like the adult with great big long, if it's a male, great big long wings going down the length of its back.
And how long will it take for the juvenile to grow into an adult?
From an egg to an adult can be 3-4 months. And then it will live for several months as an adult. So I would think a maximum lifespan of about a year for some species, less for others, longer for the bigger ones. Now if you look at a bee, for instance, that does have 2 pairs of wings, but a much bigger front pair than hind pair. But it can beat those wings at 190 beats a second.
Wow.
Which is why they make a buzzing sound, because it's going so fast, because they're actually flapping so fast. Hummingbird hawk moths, they can beat their wings incredibly fast so they can actually hover. And they hover in front of flowers so they can put their long tongue, their proboscis, down into the flower to sip out the nectar.
Okay. And you'll notice that I'm not handling the animals here. Mike is doing all of the handling of the insects because Mike knows how to handle them safely. So it's now time for activity number 2. Using the word bank on your handout, label the insect with all the body parts. You have 3 minutes to do this.
So insects have three body parts. They have the head, which is where the mouth is, the eyes, and the two antennae. Behind the head there is the thorax, which is where the three pairs of legs come from and the two pairs of wings. And then behind the thorax is the abdomen, three main body parts.
So there are the answers to that activity. We're now going to look at the life cycle of an insect and the stages it goes between the egg and the adult. Mike, what have you got here?
Well, I thought I'd bring something a little bit different. Here we've got some stages of the flower beetle, all right? Now, adult flower beetles will lay their eggs in the ground, and those tiny eggs will hatch into tiny little grubs. Those grubs will start to feed in the soil on vegetable matter, roots, all sorts of things, and they start to grow. So this is one, several months old now, and you'll see it's quite a fat little grub. Lots of food stored in there, a pair of jaws at this end, and the three pairs of legs already towards the head end. As it grows, it gets bigger, and at some point it will then metamorphose into the next stage, which is the pupa or chrysalis. And this is its pupa of the same beetle. Now you can see it doesn't move, and it's in this sort of phase for maybe a month or two. And during this time it's quite vulnerable because it's just sitting in the soil, it can't defend itself, it can't move. So what it does is it makes itself a little cocoon like this out of the soil, all glued together, so it sits inside this cocoon. I've taken it out of its cocoon just to show you, but it would be protected by this hard shell while it's in the soil. And once all the sort of body parts have changed from the body parts of a grub into the pupa, it's going to hatch out into beetle. So all the sort of cells are reorganizing themselves now inside the pupa, and it will eventually emerge as an adult, fully grown from the soil. Now I've got an adult beetle here to show you. This is an adult flower beetle. They can fly, so I've got to be quite careful. And this is the adult here. So this is a flower beetle, and again you can see the head, the thorax and the abdomen. These are the wing cases, the hard bit.
So we have the stages of the life cycle is the egg.
The egg.
Which changes into, and in this beetle it's called a grub.
We call beetle larvae grubs.
Okay.
A butterfly larva is a caterpillar.
Okay, so we've got the egg, the larva.
Yep.
And then?
The pupa or chrysalis.
Yep.
And then the adult beetle itself. So we've looked at the metamorphosis of a beetle, the flower beetle, and we've seen how the grub can spend many months underground before it changes into a pupa and then into an adult. The British stag beetle is slightly different. It does the same type of changes from egg to grub or larva to pupa and then to adult, but it can stay in the grub stage for up to 7 years.
Wow.
So it's growing and growing, eating dead trees, and then after about 7 years it will change into a pupa and then emerge as a large adult. And it will only live several months, having spent several years as a larva. Now, beyond that, there are insects called cicadas, which if you ever go on holiday to the south of Europe, you will hear in the trees because they spend all the daylight hours going calling like this, are really, really noisy. Now, they too have an egg. They have a larva that lives underground, and then they emerge into the adult with wings, and they climb up in the trees and they can fly. But there are two species, and these are called periodical cicadas, and that will become obvious why in a minute, that they can spend much longer periods, and they do spend much longer periods underground as a larva. One species spends 13 years as a grub living underground feeding. Another species spends 17 years as a grub living underground feeding. And somehow they coordinate, synchronize their emergence to the same day after that huge length of time. And you'll go one day and you'll see thousands of these cicadas emerging from the ground, crawling up the trees, hardening their wings, ready to fly. And the noise will be deafening. But how they do it after that length of time to all change on the same day, don't know.
And is it similar with mayflies?
Mayflies, and they're at the other extreme. The mayfly, the larva lives in the water, usually a stream or a pond. It may spend 1 or perhaps 2 years growing as a larva. At the end of that time, it comes to the surface of the water, the skin splits and it changes. There's no pupa. It goes from a larva to the adult. The skin splits and the mayfly emerges from that larva, sits on the surface and then flies off. 2 years as a larva, 12 hours as an adult.
It's now time for Activity 3. Order the stages of the beetle's life cycle by writing the number in the box and use the word bank to name each stage. Can you add a sentence to describe what is happening at each stage? And as an extra challenge, can you describe or draw the stages of incomplete metamorphosis? Here are the answers to Activity 3. The first stage is the egg. The second stage is the larva. The third stage is the pupa. And finally, the fourth stage is the adult. Do keep your guesses to the challenge question that we set coming through. We've had loads of guesses, but 12 hours from Year 4 and 5 at St John's in Gateshead, 4 days from Tildesley Primary School, and 2 weeks from Pankhurst class at Godfrey Erman Memorial C.A.V. Primary School. So we'll see who's the closest at the end of the session. And a few more happy birthdays to Theo, Fatima, Jack, Eddie, Zion and Luciano. Happy birthday to all of you and everybody else who's got their birthday today, celebrating in our live lesson. There is such a variety of animals on display at the Bug Park.
It's incredible. It's an enormous place with lots of buildings, and they've got all sorts of arthropods as well as insects. They've got crabs, they've got centipedes, millipedes. They've even got giant African land snails and leeches.
All arthropods.
Or apart from the last two, all the rest are arthropods.
Brilliant. Well, let's learn about two of these arthropods and look at the similarities between them and insects. Tell us a bit about this giant millipede.
I can. It's big. It's one of the biggest millipedes going, the giant millipede. And it doesn't have the same body parts of an insect. An insect has the head, the thorax, the abdomen, 3 pairs of legs, 2 pairs of wings usually. The millipede has more legs, no wings. What it has is a head and then a very long segmented body all the way down to the tip. And each of those segments has 2 pairs of legs. So 4 legs per segment. Now, a millipede, you'd think, oh, it's got 1,000 legs. It hasn't got 1,000 legs. It's got between 200 and 300 legs, depending on the species. So 2 pairs of legs per segment. Now, throughout its life, the millipede doesn't undergo metamorphosis like insects do. It doesn't change drastically from one stage to the next. Millipede lays eggs. They hatch into little tiny millipedes and they grow. And after a few months, they get to this sort of size. And you can see it's identical to its parent, different colour, but it's exactly the same format, the same shape, the head, the segments, the number of legs. And then a few months later, it's grown again to this sort of size. So they don't change, all they do is shed their skin between each growing spurt, and they eat the skin to recycle it. Now, creatures such as this millipede are really good at recycling. They can take any sort of plant waste, eat it, and then they actually make from it great compost.
So the diet of a millipede, that eats sort of soil and...
It eats dead leaves, decaying matter, decaying fruit, and then it produces perfect compost.
So comparing that to an insect, what would an insect normally eat?
Most of them eat leaves, the herbivorous ones, and the others are carnivorous ones, and they eat the herbivorous ones. So insects can be carnivorous or herbivorous, and some omnivorous, so eat both plants and animals. But millipedes are purely detritus feeders.
So we've looked at millipedes,
Yep.
And now, Mike, what have you got here?
Well, it's a centipede. It's a giant centipede. It's called Scolopendra. It's one of the biggest centipedes. It's also one of the most venomous centipedes.
Oh, wow. That's why we're keeping it in the...
Which is why I'm not taking him out. Now, they are very similar to millipedes in some respects, and they're like the millipedes, they're different to insects. They don't have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen of an insect. They've got a head and then a long segmented body. Now, unlike the millipede, the centipede has only 1 pair of legs per segment, whereas the millipede had 2 pairs of legs per segment. However, despite the fewer legs, it is much more active and much faster. Because again, unlike the millipede, which eats detritus and dead vegetable matter, the centipede is an active hunter. And underneath that head, you can see it's got these pair of antennae at the front.
So similar to an insect?
Similar to an insect, same as a millipede. It's got long antennae for finding its prey, and underneath its head is a pair of enormous jaws that act in this way, highly venomous. And if you were bitten by one of these, you would feel the effect not only of a very powerful bite, but within minutes the venom would take effect. And you could be in bed for several days, high temperature, pain, fever, you feel awful. So you don't handle these lightly. And even the British centipede, which is only about 3 centimetres long, it's exactly the same structure, and it also has a venomous bite. But if it did bite you, you wouldn't really feel it. These big ones pack a big punch. So it's active at night, and it usually runs around the forest floor looking for food, and then it retreats to a hiding place, usually under an old log or piece of bark or a stone, and that's where it will spend the day. So these are all arthropods. They're all members of the same family as the insects, but these are arthropods with many more legs than the 6-legged insects. And while these animals have a highly venomous bite, insects can carry a highly venomous sting. Hornets, wasps, some ants, bees, they all have a sting which they can either singly sting you with, like a bee, can only use it once, or repeatedly sting you with in the form of a wasp or a hornet. So equally painful. However, this does carry a very, very powerful bite.
So it's the centipede would have the venomous bite, whereas a wasp or an insect may have a venomous sting.
Yes, and also things like scorpions, they too have the sting in the end of the tail, and in some cases it's mildly venomous, and in other cases it's highly venomous. And a good rule of thumb, but don't quote me on this, is that the smaller the pincers on a scorpion, the more powerful its venom. If they've got great big pincers, you can see it doesn't need much venom. I'm just going to pull it apart. They're the ones that aren't quite so bad when they sting you.
So Mike has told us about the features of a millipede and a centipede. It's now time for activity number 4. Use what Mike has told you to discuss the similarities and differences between a millipede, centipede and an insect. You have 2 minutes to do this. I wonder how many facts the pupils at Melling Primary School, Linden Green Junior School and Grand Vaux School could remember when doing that activity. At the start of the session, we asked a challenge question. How long would it take those ants to strip the leaves? Let's find out the answer. Don't those ants work incredibly fast? Thank you to everyone for your guesses. Well done to St Mary's School for Girls, Maidensbridge Primary School, St Catherine's RC School and Rycroft Academy. You were all very close with a guess of an hour, but St John Bosco RC Primary School, you said 58 minutes, so well done to you. So it's now time for Mike to answer some of your questions.
Okay.
So, Mike, this has come from Essendon C of E Primary School, Warren class, and Elise has asked, how do leafcutter ants carry such heavy leaves?
Well, they can carry a leaf 20 times the weight of their own body. And that's true for many, many ants. Not all ants carry leaves, so the leafcutter ants do that. Other species of ant carry other insects and all sorts of things back to the nest. So they're all designed, because of the way the muscles and the legs work and the strong jaws, to carry heavy loads.
Fabulous. And this has come from B class at Carlton Colville Primary School. Hello to you. How many types of beetle are there in the UK?
In the UK, around about 4,000 species of beetle just in our islands.
Brilliant. Mary class at St Mary's and Benedict's. How big are beetles? What's the biggest beetle?
Well, the tiniest one is probably too small to be seen. It's only 0.5 millimetre long. The biggest one, there are several that are called the Goliath beetle or the elephant beetle. They can weigh up to about 75 grams. However, their larva, their grub, that can be even heavier, about 100 grams, but it shrinks when it changes into a beetle.
Year 5, lots of questions about beetles today. Year 5, St Clement's Primary School have asked, are there any endangered species of beetle?
Yes, there are. There are quite a few. There's about 600 endangered species of insect in the world, and many of those are beetles, some like the golden stag beetle or even the jewel beetles. And now the name gives you a clue. They're very attractive beetles and people collect them. But they're all now protected. But those beetles are some of the rarest there are.
Okay. Stuart class at Hillview Academy have asked, do insects have blood?
No. We have blood, which is red, because our blood is designed mainly to carry oxygen around the body, as well as liquids and nutrients. Insect blood is very different, because all that does is take liquids around the body. They don't breathe through the blood. They don't have lungs. They have little holes in their abdomen, which take oxygen directly into the tissues. So they're not reliant on blood for that. So their blood isn't red because it doesn't contain hemoglobin. It's usually either yellowish or even greenish in colour.
Wow, brilliant question. And we have had 2 similar questions, one from Nutton St Mary, Kai at Nutton St Mary, and Hillview Academy, Hussein class. What climate does a locust live in, and what is its habitat?
Well, there are several species of locusts in the world. The most famous one is the migratory locust, and that's the one that you see in tens of millions. And they're normally around Central and Northern Africa. However, if the wind is in the right direction, they can get blown into Europe and occasionally into the UK, but only in small numbers, and it's too cold to breed. But their habitat normally is dry conditions, desolate areas, but as soon as there's any rain, that's a trigger for the plants to grow, and it's a trigger for the locusts to emerge from the ground and eat everything they can see.
Felton Fleet, a question from them about a leafcutter ant, and I think you've sort of mentioned that earlier, but what is the heaviest weight a leafcutter ant could carry?
Well, it's 20 times its own body weight, which is micrograms. So it's a bit like you carrying, well, me, I could probably a mini car.
Oh wow,
yeah,
a car, small car.
Along, yeah, small car, and it said walking along. That was probably weird.
Goodness me. A question from Our Lady of Lourdes Primary School in Brighton. Hello to you. What is the rarest insect?
It's the Lord Howe Island. Well, we call it a tree lobster, but it's actually a stick insect. And Lord Howe Island in the Pacific Ocean is an uninhabited rock. And these things live on the only bit of vegetation on the island, and they all got wiped out nearly about 100 years ago when there was a shipwreck and the rats came off the ship and went onto the island and ate all the stick insects. However, there was an expedition in the last few years and they found a few.
Oh, wow.
Right on some of the top cliffs. So they managed to bring those back into captivity, and they've now got a breeding population of Lord Howe Island stick insects, tree lobsters, which they can replace once they've got rid of the rats off the island.
And Clifton All Saints Academy, are crickets and locusts related?
They are quite closely related, but there are differences. For instance, when a locust or a grasshopper makes a noise, it rubs its long back legs against the wings. Zzz, zzz. Whereas a cricket always makes a noise by rubbing 2 wings together. And the other difference is a female cricket usually has a long sword-shaped ovipositor at the back because they lay their eggs in holes in trees or underground or in other soft areas. So they need a spike in order to do that.
Brilliant. And we've had this question from a lot of pupils. How many insects are there in the world?
Well, someone sat down and tried to calculate that, and they came up with a figure of 12 quintillion. Now, I don't know what a quintillion is, but when they've broke it down. They said per person on the planet, there are 1.4 billion insects.
So for every one human...
One human, 1.4 billion insects. So that's a lot.
That is a lot, isn't it? We've had so many brilliant questions. Sorry that we've not got time to answer them all. But a question about you, Mike. How long have you studied insects for from our class at Barningham Primary School?
Blimey, I used to keep insects from the age of 4. I used to collect caterpillars of blackberry bushes and take them home and raise them into little moths. I used to get butterflies and breed those and have lots of those. I used to have pet cockroaches, all sorts of things, all my life from the age I can remember, 4 or 5 years old.
Fabulous. And a final question then. What is your favourite insect and why?
Well, I like a lot of them. The orchid mantis is really special because it just looks like an orchid flower, and it sits in an orchid flower, and any flies or bees that come and visit, it grabs them. So it's perfect camouflage. But I also like the Madagascan giant hissing cockroach because when you poke it, it goes psst. It expels air from the size of its abdomen, and it hisses at you to say, "Don't eat me because I am quite tough."
Well, we've come to the end of our session today, but we have provided lots of follow-up activities for you to complete. As always, please send photos of the work that you've completed or share them with us on social media because we love to see your work. Thank you for joining us today for this live lesson. We have had around 13,000 pupils log in at live and take part in this session. Thank you to Mike for being so insightful about insects, and I hope you have a wonderful science week.